Welcome to the Friendly Aussie Podcast.
What's up, Internet? Welcome once more to the Friendly Aussie Podcast. We're back. We're finally back after it would have been longer than 6 months, 8 months.
September.
Now.
What are we in now? April?
Ridiculous.
That's like 8 months.
Yeah, sorry for leaving you cold for so long. We're still kicking in season 2, 2022, and today we have two very special guests. Why don't you take it away? Also introduce these guys.
Today we have two aspiring and successful Aussie entrepreneurs in the cannabis space, Neil and Dave. Neil and Dave come from two companies, one called Canwell, a medicinal cannabis clinic that specializes in telehealth appointments, and Elevated Extracts, their flower company, where they have an actual brand in Australia that's selling legal medicinal cannabis. Never thought we'd be here, but we're here. It's 2022, and we're in a room with two dudes who are selling weed legally.
Woo!
Take it away, boys.
Jed, thanks for having us, and congrats on your freedom.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
And welcome back after 6 months.
Yeah.
Cheers, it's great to have you.
It's been good.
It's a pleasure to be on the first one back. It's been a journey for you, gents, huh?
Yeah, definitely. It's been a weird period where we've had to redefine what we are doing while maintaining like our integrity and maintaining just facing the courts and dealing with the legal system is a big load of perspective in terms of what exists out there and the kinds of challenges that we're facing at the moment. So yeah.
Definitely felt a little bipolar, a lot of up and down.
Yeah, lots of roller coaster type movements.
Yeah, we've done a few corkscrews, a couple of loop-de-loops.
Yeah, exactly.
Honestly, we might have even started riding the track backwards.
Well, you may have just described the legal market as well. To be honest, there's a few parallels there for sure.
Yeah, well, it must be quite a ride being on that kind of space at the moment as well, existing in an emerging marketplace.
Yeah,
Must be quite
it is. So, I mean, timing, as we know, is everything. So we've been pretty fortunate, would you say, Neil, with where we've come in.
Yeah.
So I guess our journey actually started probably best part of 5 years ago.
Yeah. Let's get into that. What actually began? How did your journey first begin?
Yeah, right. So I guess maybe explaining a little bit about our background kind of dovetails into that story a bit as well. So I know myself personally, I'm a marketer by trade.
Cool.
I spent the last 9 years before entering the cannabis industry with Red Bull Energy Drink and was doing events, action sports, fashion, etc. before then.
Cool.
And Neil was...
Yeah, so mine's not as exciting as Dave's Red Bull adventures, but I've been in technology, so specifically doing 10 years with Queensland Health in medical technology, helping support the health and hospital systems.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, which is pretty exciting. Was fortunate enough to be part of the technical stand-up for the medical cannabis unit within Queensland Health as well, so kind of thrust us along when we saw that getting stood up, and it's been a bit of an interesting journey into the space we're in now, because it's kind of like a similar thing, but just in the medical cannabis market. Still doing medical health, still doing telehealth, still supporting from a technical point of view. But just, in the legal cannabis market, it's been exciting. You've got a jet going out the front.
We don't have many hoons, but today we do.
But yeah,
Labor
so
Day.
I guess...
That's the cannabis industry just taking off.
Yeah, we got a little crystal ball into that. So I guess between work and play, I've been going back and forth from the States for about 15 years, specifically West Coast of California there, with the exception of the last 2 for obvious reasons. And
Wow.
I remember I was over there, I met my now wife, I met over in LA there. And I remember when we were when we were over there for one of her birthdays. We got back from Vegas. Everyone was pretty dusty, as you can imagine. We're at a friend's place in Long Beach. We ordered a couple of pizzas, and then she jumps on Weed Maps, orders a couple of bags as well. And before the pizza had arrived, the cannabis had got there, along with a couple of bonus joints. Some legend bumps some knuckles, and he's out the door. And as you can imagine,
Man,
this
dream.
is going back a few years. Like, it was still very much a black market here. So I mean, my head was spinning off my top. So I came back, told Neil about that, and then the quest began of, all right, how can we be prepared for this when the opportunity arises in Australia?
Yeah. Wow.
And then I suppose from those conversations, we kind of had a few strategies of how we're going to step into the industry. Did a bit of sidestep here and there, but ended up landing on launching a hemp range. So under an umbrella called Naturally Elevated. So hemp seeds, hemp proteins, hemp textiles like yoga mats and bags. And then we kind of use that as the springboard and catalyst into the medical cannabis market.
Yeah, it seems like a good place to start. Maybe a bit more accessible than the cannabis market was
It was
initially.
good because we got to learn about cannabis in general. We got to make some
Yeah.
connections with people who are in this space and peripherally in the medical space. And for us, it was the perfect launching pad into elevated extracts, which is kind of then, it's moved us along.
Yeah, so it took about a kind of year writing that strategy, then about a year to bring Naturally Elevated to life. Then 12 months after that, we started playing with some opportunities in the CBD space specifically, with the intentions of getting into flower, what we thought would be a few years after that. Luckily, when we landed, things were starting to take off, and flower was accessible. So we launched both Canwell and Elevated Extracts just over 9 months ago now. Feels like it's been a couple of years. It's been, like you said, roller coasters, very much the reality for us. But we had kind of 3 very specific goals when we got in, as people who had been, messed around on the black market, where I think everyone's experienced that roller coaster. And also what we'd learned from the medicinal market, which was fair pricing, streamlined access, and culturally/audience relevant communication. So for us, it was like, the price point was just out of reach for what I would say the average Australian is.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, look, people are willing to pay. There's elasticity in cannabis pricing to a point. So I know
Sure.
for myself, on the black market, hypothetically, I would have been happy to spend anywhere from $3 to $3.50, and that was kind of it. If anyone came at me with anything more than that, not that you couldn't necessarily
question it.
You question it, yeah. And I mean, look, at this stage, I'm getting a bit older. There's you got a family and stuff. You can only look yourself in the mirror for so long if you're spending hundreds, a month on cannabis.
For sure.
Yeah. So we wanted to come in with something we thought was reasonable. The access, look, I mean, this is where we give kind of full credit to the trailblazers that got this industry off the ground. There are some amazing people in the space, some great clinics. We now have some of those doctors like Dr. Chang, Dr. Justin Welsh on the Canwell platform. But of course, there's guys like Dr. Tay there at Plant Med. There's some really credible doctors over at Can I Help. There's a bunch out there doing great things. But what we thought we could assist with is just streamline the communication for the average person. I know for us, we know a lot of people who smoke cannabis recreationally or for specific medicinal reasons. A lot of us who kind of sit in the middle, who are doing it for medicinal reasons without realizing, like sleep and mental health, etc. And it was like, why do we not know that this is available? And then once you do, why can't we afford it? So that's kind of where Elevated's mission kicked off.
That's super cool. The interesting thing about you two is it seems like you had a really clear vision going into the space, into the industry, and had prior experience to make that possible. So I guess my question is, like, how much of it was, spontaneous, right place, right time, met each other and kind of like, decided that you were going to do this on a whim? Or was it more something that had been kind of developing for a long period of time, something that kind of came into being because you had prior planning involved,
It's actually, it's been odd how much our planning early on, and when me and Dave started talking about this, has come to fruition.
Wow.
Like our goal initially, when we started on other ventures, even before Naturally Elevated, was always to get to that point where we could have, like Dave said, quality, accessible medical cannabis delivered to patients.
Yeah.
And it's like 5 years later, we are living that in more of a crystallized form than we saw it back in the day. It's been unbelievable how it's going to come to fruition. And the things that we're doing now are the things that we talked about 5 years ago when we originally started this.
So you're living the dream.
Living the dream, yeah.
Freaking sweet.
Yeah, it's been, we put it out there, we talked about it, and we talk obsessively about this stuff. Like, we've had a real interest in the past 5 years, so we've had time to strategize, plan. Like, we spent a year strategizing, a year planning, and it's, like I say, it's really strange how much it's crystallized into what we talked about 5 years ago. It's unbelievable.
Wow. So how did you two, become partners? How did that happen?
School buddies,
Wow.
It's a bit of an age-old story. So kind of 20 plus years we've known each other, and always acknowledged this would be an opportunity one day, but never spoke about it too seriously until I got back from that faithful trip and was like, all right, there's something on the horizon here. We are fortunate, I think you kind of touched on something with our particular skill set. So, this industry would not be where it was if it wasn't for the doctors and solicitors and regulators who got it off the ground to start with. So
Yeah.
we absolutely tip our hat to that. But it was that, patient experience, what I traditionally would have called a consumer experience, that seemed to be lacking. So that's where Neil and I kind of sat back and went like, all right, what's our gripes? And then, how can we kind of plug those holes? And I guess combining the marketing side of things with, Neil's operational side of things, which is absolutely the coal that's got this bloody train moving to start with, is what's got us off the ground, So it's, I think that's what's resonated with people and has given us a bit of a quicker start than we might have expected, is people kind of recognizing.
You guys came in, I think, very much perfect timing. I think COVID was the real catalyst for you.
Yeah.
Like people suddenly couldn't go out and meet their old mate or, technically their doctor in that regard. So, a legal option was like, oh, okay. And then on top of black market prices soaring, you guys kind of came in and provided pretty much the equivalent, maybe cheaper, maybe more, depending on who, you're buying from. But you came in and you had that, and no one had to leave their house to get the medicine, so covered for COVID.
Yeah. And look, I mean, I think it's fair to say that it gave us the courage as well to say, let's write our notice, and jump into this space. Interesting conversation with your parents, when it's kind of out of the blue. Hey, we're quitting our jobs to sling weed. Maybe a little more eloquent than that, but that's certainly what they heard.
So what did they think? Can I ask that?
Oh, I mean, you saw the blood rush from their face. I think at that stage it had been a little bit of a journey. We were doing the hemp stuff, and they were starting to understand, and we were planting some seeds there.
Sure.
I mean, we've both got fairly traditional parents in the sense that they weren't, necessarily children of the revolution, but
Right.
not the complete hard asses either. So you could have the conversation, but it took a little bit of convincing. And I mean, I actually think it was only potentially this morning, we're showing them the new warehouse. We've got out at a new location there, where I think the penny dropped for them, like, oh wow, this is something real. And not only is it something real, this is something real in the medicinal space. It's not just, they found a way to sell cannabis, they found a way to help patients, which has been not necessarily a shock, but has been an amplified response with some of the patient feedback we've got. It's touching, which, I mean, Neil could probably speak to more than
I was going to say, from my parents' perspective, though, there's still that ongoing conversation. I don't know if my parents still fully understand what's going on. Like,
That's where
it's
my
still
parents sit.
Yeah, it's still a bit of a journey for them. But I think there's more publicity out there. They're seeing news articles. They've got friends who are now taking it. So they're in that, elderly age bracket where there's a lot of people turning to CBD, even some THC products. So they're having those conversations, and I think slowly they're realising, maybe they are onto something. Maybe they're doing something that's helpful here. So I think it's still a bit of a transition and progression, but they're
Work
getting
in
there
progress.
slowly. Yeah, for sure.
I hear that.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of, getting a little bit proud now, especially seeing some of the things we're turning on and getting feedback from outside people rather than us just talking to them about the experience they've had through us. So
For sure.
some of that kind of actualisation is sinking in with them now, which is good. It's nice to have the parents on board.
Yeah, without a doubt. We feel the same way.
My dad had a similar realization. My dad wears the Fuck PGR shirts, the big
Nice.
Run DMC ones.
Yeah.
He grabbed one and he's worn it around heaps, and he's like, there's no other shirt that I've ever worn that gets this much attention. Like, at all. Like, he's like, everyone comes up to him, he's like, cool, man. And he's like, yes, it is cool.
Does he know what it means?
Yeah, he knows
okay,
like
right.
all of what it is, and he understands it, but he's a hard ass wog. So like traditionalist plus some like foreign, where like they had like the real US propaganda of like cannabis can almost kill you kind of vibes.
Yeah, okay.
But slowly coming around, still kind of deny cannabis as much of anything good for people. But
Well, particularly your
Yeah.
stepmom has like, some medical things that she could probably deal with, right?
yeah, she could use it for sleep, that's for sure. She can't get like through a night's of sleep. But stepbrother had some negative experiences with cannabis where he kind of suffered a mild case of psychosis.
Yeah.
But
okay.
it was kind of all like predicated on other things as well. It's not just the cannabis.
As always.
But then it's a very easy thing like, and that's what did it. It wasn't anything else in your past trauma, none of that. It was just the cannabis. That was the only thing that did it. It's
Yeah,
like,
okay.
it's not quite true.
Yeah.
I mean, in comparison though, we just set up a website. Like, we haven't done anything like built a warehouse or like, assigned a bunch of doctors to patients or created like an entire kind of supply network of medicinal cannabis. Like that's a big operation. Do you ever like kick yourself? Is it like what the hell, we're doing this? Or actually,
I mean, absolutely. But before I even answer that, I mean, what you guys are doing is essentially our third pillar of that audience relevant education.
Yeah.
You know, like it, because I mean, to answer your question, but fuck yeah. I mean, everybody is kind of like a kip out of bed is like, is this real? And I mean, with every order you place and every order you receive, I mean, it's an even bigger head spin. But yeah, look, I mean,
So
for
cool.
ours, we're super understanding of people like your parents, like our parents, and I mean, a good chunk of the population who is ignorant to the benefits, but also just has a negative perception of what the industry is because they've been blasted with
sure.
that for decades. You know, so for us to come out and start, oh, well, are you aware of terpene profiles of endocannabinoid? Like, their eyes are going to glass over. They're not going to know what the heck we're talking about. So for websites like what you've got and these podcasts you're doing, I mean, it's just a microphone for people to hear about what this actually is.
oh, for sure.
We have kind of a similar backstory in my eyes. So the way you two kind of talked about like 5 years ago, what could you do? I kind of had that same conversation with myself, maybe friends as well. But I remember for us, or for me, it was a trigger on Reddit. Someone asked, how can you position yourself to, I don't know if the word was profit or capitalize or whatever it was when cannabis is legal. I replied in that thread and I was like, start a movement, start something like a following and build like an audience, because then whenever things happen, you can market towards them and you've got that as your foothold. And I was like sitting there after I typed it out, I was like, I'm so fucking smart, fuck yeah. And I'm like, hit enter and I'm like, fuck, I should do that. Like, why am I not doing that? Like, I like weed. I like weed a lot. And before then, I had to justify to myself that cannabis was okay. So I spent like thousands of hours like researching cannabis. Like I went into medical studies while I was at uni, while I had the library pass, and I spent more time learning about cannabis, guaranteed, than I did my IT degree. Like straight away, I knew more about cannabis by the end of my degree.
Library's a great resource.
It's fucking handy. I don't know why they get rid of it when you leave. I've just given you 30 something fucking
Information is
$1,000.
not free under capitalism.
$30,000 I paid, and like they're like, nah, no more library for you.
You know, the thing is though, it's exactly that. Like creating a movement prior to legalization, like, you know, once it's happened, you can focus on integrating yourself into a thriving industry.
Yep.
And, you know, you're not just helping people who are your readers or people who listen to you. You're also part of something that's much bigger.
Yep.
So that's really exciting. That's like part of why we started in the first place. But then the next question was like, how do we approach the problem of legalization or like prohibition, basically?
Yeah.
And it became a question very similar to yours, where it's like, well, how do we fill people in on the gaps that exist because of this propaganda, which prevents people from even like looking even skin deep into the issue.
Exactly. Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, having just gone April 20, you know, I saw a 420 conversation online, and it's pretty funny because it was like, oh, what should this day be? You know, like some people are using it to push product, and maybe we should be doing it to get people out of jail, or is it a time for the culture to celebrate? Like, hey, it can be all that.
For sure.
And that's what we need, you know, like...
Very important discussion to have too.
Yeah.
It's also Hitler's birthday, I'll just say.
Is it?
Oh,
Yeah, it is.
for real?
Yeah, so it kind of taints the day.
Certainly does. I'm glad you told me
I don't know.
after 20.
You know?
Praise Hitler.
Yeah, well, his campaign went up in smoke, so I guess it works all out in the end. But I mean, it's an interesting one for sure, because it's I don't know. I think as cannabis consumers, we all share something, but it's certainly different. You know, like and I'm even for myself. Last night after I had my medicine, I ate at a tie one of my kids' Easter chocolates, you know. But other times when I have my medicine, I'll go for a 10K run. Like it depends what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, you know. And I think everyone in the industry has a fairly unique story. We might all bob along to a bit of reggae, but that aside, I mean, there's a lot of diversity in this industry, and I think
different.
the attempts
Absolutely.
to flatten it are just hangovers from yesteryear's propaganda.
Yeah. It's just like, you know, it's the diversity of humanity, basically. Like everyone's unique. They bring something unique to the community.
Yep.
And the more that you can break apart, like the idea of like, oh yes, this is the typical stoner, this is the typical recreational or medicinal user. I think that's part of what you set out to do as well with this kind of customer experience, which isn't just about catering to one community or another portion of the community. It's about like meeting people where they're at almost, you know?
100%, definitely agree. I mean, especially like nowadays with all these kind of, these tribal differences that are going on in communities. Like
Right.
cannabis is that one of those things that kind of crosses all over.
Yeah, can unite
Yeah,
people.
it's a left and right issue. you
Exactly,
know? Like,
exactly.
The right are like, it's my freedom, and the left are like, don't persecute me. Like,
Pretty much.
And
Yeah,
it's such a
crosses.
I was
Yeah.
going to say it's a neglected bunch that come through. Like with Canwell, we get to speak to patients all the time, and you get, those typical patients that you'd expect, those kind of bogan type, people that come through, but you get also your professionals as well, your high professionals, your elderly that are coming through. It is a real eclectic bunch of people that come through, and it's nice to be able to service all of that.
yeah. You do meet a lot of very interesting people in the cannabis space, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I guess we're fortunate having guys grown up as bogans and found our way through the white collar industry.
Where did you guys go to school again?
Yeah, we're a couple of Logan boys. We're from Chisholm.
Oh,
Chisholm,
yeah.
Mad Canubia there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. and
So
then-
we fit in that bogan classification. For sure.
Did you rock up in a Commodore, though?
No.
Yeah.
You've lost a few points.
Yeah, well, I mean, who can afford it with the fuel price?
Straight
But
up.
no, what is interesting on the day to day, I mean, particularly with Canwell, like as Neil said, you got the people coming through who are like, oh, I'm having trouble sleeping, so can I please have 120 grams a month type thing of, the hottest fly you've got. But then the next call is someone who's in palliative care or childhood epilepsy or, some very kind of serious and heart-wrenching calls you have, so you really get to appreciate the fact that this is medicine, and while we are advocates for, adult recreation, etc. as well, I think that's what makes it hardest for people who aren't in the industry or aren't cannabis consumers to accept is, wait, you're telling me this is medicine? Clearly you enjoy it. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, how dare I?
It is.
Yeah.
Mango's a fruit. It's still fucking delicious. You know what I mean? Like, it can be both. So,
Well, an orange, it's giving you vitamin C.
exactly, yeah.
So
Yeah.
you shouldn't enjoy
But
one.
mimosa still exists. So,
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting point. I think or maybe it's just how tightly regulated it's been by the TGA here in Australia. It's almost as if there's this legal framework underlying how serious we should be taking medical cannabis versus how we, shouldn't take the recreational side of it seriously at all. People shouldn't enjoy the experience.
Exactly. Yeah, and there seems to be a fear that enjoyment will somehow hurt the industry.
Yeah,
and even
yeah.
though every single legal
think
state
it-
in the world
I think it
has
comes
been
down
culturally led.
to the dependence issue, right?
Yeah.
So like they don't like giving stimulants out to people who will take them recreationally because it's like you form that dependence and you're really just abusing it. So it's kind of, I think, the same analogy for cannabis. It's like they don't want people to like overuse it to be like, I don't know where that like comes from if you think
No,
about it. But, like
I
it's the
hear you.
overuse kind of idea.
I think
that-
it is a thing that's then, again, rooted in prohibition because it's not necessarily treated, even in the case of people who are abusing the medicine or aren't necessarily taking it in a responsible way. They're classed under, let's basically marginalize these people rather than giving them the care that they kind of need, like either the mental health, provision that they need or some kind of... like rehabilitation of sorts. Like
Yeah.
we don't treat it as a medical issue when people are down and out on the recreational side, and that's a big problem.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, you got to look at a lot of those people. I mean, you see a lot of this chat on Reddit about, it's these bloody recreational users. It's like, who were we all until the day we saw a doctor? I mean, it's like all this. I mean, I know there is some people, but we know some people we've put through who are like, I'm not sure about this cannabis stuff. I've heard about it, but I've never.
Yeah,
sure.
And they exist, but a lot of people, particularly the ones who end up on a flower product, generally speaking, they've been relied on the black market. We know
Yeah.
a good authority, the people who built this industry, who shut people down sometimes.
Had to come from somewhere.
They've got experience with the black market. So, I mean, until we're patients, we're loser stoners is kind of the perception.
Yeah.
But again, we don't throw stones at people who have these thoughts because even myself, and I mean, I think you're playing the same, Neil. I mean, we're deep in this.
Right.
But there's still those moments when you're taking your medicine and it's like, am I,
Yeah, that's
am I
stigma.
doing the wrong thing here? Yeah, there's that hangover from, the negative propaganda for sure.
it still lingers.
Definitely does. And you talked about it being like distinctly medical, but it's like I really appreciate where we're at as well. It's like there's so many patients coming through that never knew could be possible. Even patients we talk to every day still don't really understand that it's still possible. So the fact that we're here, even though it's tightly regulated and there's still a lot of red tape to go through, there's a real appreciation that we're in this space and we can get quality medicines to people who need it.
Yeah, no doubt. You got to be grateful for the opportunity to change people's lives.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And the proof's in the pudding, right?
For sure.
Once the results are coming in, which they are, puts the pressure on.
It's I like the category approvals that changed last year, so you didn't have to get approved for every single medicine. That sucked so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, reform's happening. Like even in like pockets of the country, like in Canberra, there's the plant rule that you can now grow a couple at your house.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So if to buy seeds from, but
and it's decriminalised, isn't it? Like you can carry up to 50
grams. Yeah.
So it's those kinds of incremental reforms that, assuming that that's the trajectory and we're moving forward in that way, I can see within the next 10 years like a real opening up of the space.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
That's the exciting thing. That's one stroke of a pen and everything changes.
That's
so true. And it really just takes, like, we've talked to a few politicians on this podcast, some who are on like the Labor or the Green side, who would just use the strike of a pen or have just used the strike of a pen to reform the laws and make a positive difference in this space. And it's the fact that those people are willing to back up all of the advocates on the ground and the whole grassroots movement, and they're willing to take a risk and do something bold, despite the fact that it might be a political, might make them, unelectable or something like that. Like it's those people who are working in tandem with the rest of us that I think we really need to support to hell or high water at the end of the day. Because, that kind of political parliamentary reform is actually much more difficult than I think most of us appreciate. And I don't think we have really an answer, even with all of the legalization that's happened in the US and Canada. Those are different, what would you call it? Like different landscapes.
Yeah.
When it comes to lobbying, when it comes to their parliament and how their system works, we're kind of working it out, not entirely from square one, but we still have to have like a unique, it's a bit like what happened in New Zealand with their referendum, how it actually was voted down.
Brutal.
That was savage that day.
Yeah.
I thought that was a slam dunk.
I was actually at Medcan when we found that out. I was looking at the Medcan farm and like I pulled up the phone and I saw that it got denied and we were all just like nearly in tears. Like it was just like fuck that shit.
Yeah.
It wasn't a good day.
That was for the summit. Yeah. Man, that was crap.
It was, and I think it's probably slowed things down here a little bit as well.
A little bit.
If that had flipped and gone yes, I think Australia would be taken a bit more seriously.
Yeah, I think it could have been actually pushed into election, at least in some degree, this time round. But I don't think we can get that till next time.
True. But you know what's interesting about the election this time around? You have a lot of people who are looking to vote for independents or third parties and micro parties. And there's the single issue party for cannabis legalization that's going to run in the
Cannabis
Senate.
Australia.
Yeah.
So I wonder how successful that's going to be on a federal level and whether we might even get a seat on the crossbench.
Well, now the podcast is back on and you're talking to the people, I can garner some of that support,
As long as they see that name, they'll probably vote for it, I would assume. They just got to see a giant, there's probably going to be like 80 plus names on this white bill. And you're going to be like,
that's the issue with voting.
There it is.
But I mean, you got guys like the Honourable Dr. Brian Walker at WA, who is advocating for this, but from a point of expertise as a doctor, and an unbelievably eloquent guy as well. This is where that culturally or audience relevant education we're talking about from. I mean, you can go to Nimbin or go to the expos and you preach it to the choir. People get it. And
it's very hard to put it into that mainstream.
It is, isn't it? It is, and this is why we saw athletes getting banned from the Olympics for cannabis use. We've got serious, call them tech bros or whatever, but serious, business leaders. You've got people like Olivia Newton-John, just the global sweetheart out here, kind of advocating for it. And I think that's what we need is just some different voices, or at least a different pitch. So we're not just talking to the people who already get it. Letting mum and dad know, letting the neighbour know who's.
We've got Germany that's just legalized, so like they're pushing those bills through, and it's gone through. I'm pretty sure it's just not like enacted yet. Like I think there's a year ramp up or whatever. But that's the EU superpower. So that's going to spread through Europe, I think, pretty quickly once they establish what's going on in the regulations, because everyone will borrow from it, I would think.
Yep.
But then you've got the Dutch really trying to put a ban on tourism for the cannabis again. They're trying to push that agenda. I don't know why. And then you've got the Senate bill that's passed in the US for federal legalization. It probably is not going to pass the House of Reps, but it's definitely getting like that much closer. So I think it's like any one of those events that has a good success, I think is going to be, it's going to start that topic here to another level again.
Yeah, it establishes momentum. It's that kind of thing.
It's one of the things I notice with like anyone from the cannabis world in particular, former drinkers, people who used to drink quite a lot, and they're like, I just like that I now have another alternative.
Yeah.
And it's a shame that, some of that might just end up having to go on the medical to get that alternative because it seems recreational use, but it's like, that person's just using it to de-stress. How is that not medicinal? The way someone takes a drink, that's a medicinal effort to me. Like that relaxes you in some form. Like, your muscles go down, you get a little goofy, blah, blah, blah. But that's to me like your self-care, your TLC, your rest and recovery, whatever you want to call it. Like that's definitely a part of your healthcare project. So it's like, why has it taken this long to even just recognize that as a cannabis benefit? Not even like all the other things that helps for that are more serious conditions, but like just relaxing. Like, why is that not like, yes, I will prescribe 1 marijuanas for relaxation. Why isn't that a thing? It should be.
I think it's just it's a thing where anything involved with the war on drugs is sensationalized, and the actual facts, the medical evidence, the literature that exists behind each and every one of these questions isn't necessarily what guides the behavior of people who are actually acting to, write legislation or make decisions about how people get to operate in regards to these things.
It's like ultimately consciousness is fine, but to what level? Like a glass of red on a Friday night, excellent. Smashing Jaeger bombs at a Saturday night, you're partying.
True.
The same with cannabis. If you rip it a couple of buckets before you, go to the movies. Man. You guys are stoners.
I've got an expression.
Yeah.
Fuck it, time for buckets.
But for the mighty medic before bed, then it's like, they're a patient. So it's all the same activity, but it kind of, I don't know, there's definitely a Venn diagram there where I think most people live in the middle.
Yeah.
Right. And context really matters for people, like how and where they find themselves in relation to what they're using.
Yeah.
Even like the kind of mental state that you're in before you take something. Like the dosage matters, of course, but it could just be the kind of things that people are dealing with in their lives.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, before I learned about, I learned about the endocannabinoid system, I was always like, smoking weed for pain. Like, I just thought, like, what are you doing? That's just, I'm just going to be hyper aware of the agony, because I didn't understand what was going on. But then you learned about it. It's like, oh, no, this is actually having a very, biochemical response with my person, And,
it's fascinating.
It's helping the pain, I mean, I actually didn't use the prescription stuff and just used THC after a recent hernia operation. And it was excellent,
Wow, right.
It was a relaxing couple of days as well. Like Netflix got a good blasting, but the pain was also gone. It was pretty incredible stuff.
I was thinking actually about like a depression as a symptom. Obviously, you've got a lot of issues with depression in society at the moment. COVID's magnified that even more. But then, what's like kind of the cure for depression? Really, to me, it's like connection. Yep. Right? Like, I think someone generally depressed doesn't feel very connected to the world. And it's weird. What's cannabis do, especially when you have it with people, you connect with them immediately. You get on that level, and somehow all of your, like, I guess it's your worries are gone. Not that they're gone forever, but, like, gone out of mind. But it lets you, connect with someone to talk about those problems that you've got. So it's kind of weird, like the social aspect, which is the recreational aspect, is actually the medicinal aspect if you look at it in terms of what the effect is for that to me. Yeah. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. I mean, solitary confinement is the worst form of punishment. There's, I mean, what community means now is very interesting, because, I mean, when we were at school, if you said your community was online, I mean, you don't have a community, you're a loner. Like, that's basically what you were saying, where now it's people's whole identity. I mean, anyone we're speaking to right now is by default listening online.
Just realized my community in high school was my guild.
You're a loner yourself.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's deserved, so who knows?
That's where I learned my very, very valuable life skills.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing about like, I don't know, the increased alienation associated with just like being alive in the modern world.
Yeah.
Where, you know, things have increasingly become further apart while we've somehow gotten closer together with the internet. It's just this, I don't know, this notion that even the most basic of connections, even the most basic of interactions with people
Yeah.
can actually mean a lot.
Yeah.
And it's like the subtlety of that, even if it is like you're listening to a podcast developing a parasocial relationship, or you're like, you know, speaking to one of your friends that you don't see very often in person, and you just like, you know, caught them out on one night randomly or something like that. That kind of impact that it has on human beings, it reminds you that we're social animals.
Yeah.
And that actually a large part of like why we do things is because we're people who are connected to other people. Like no one is an island, that kind of thing.
Yeah, 100%. And if you've ever passed or been passed a joint from a stranger at a festival or something,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, oh, cool.
Mad
I
cool.
get like, oh, this is a sick moment.
cheers,
Yeah, awesome. Yeah,
Yeah, and
there's something
you
to
won't
that,
forget
yeah.
that. You
No.
will not. I still remember getting past a joint at a festival in Italy like 6 years ago.
Yeah,
I still remember that because I was hunting for some weed that day.
yeah.
Makes an
And
impression.
It just fucking, it was just a hash joint just came over and I was like, sick.
My depression's gone.
Yeah, and that was while I was watching Bad Religion.
Yeah,
So
right.
that was
Ooh,
pretty
nice.
pretty fitting. It felt like that was a good one. I was very grateful for that.
And I remember watching, went to Daft Punk at the River Stage.
Oh, hell
Oh,
yeah.
that would have been cool.
Yeah, the best. Yeah, and I'm not sure if this is the coolest or the lamest thing I've ever done, but only lame because it was premeditated. I rocked up with about 6 or 7 pre-rolled joints.
Yeah.
And about halfway through the set, just started lighting them.
And just handing them out.
handing
I've
to
done that
people in the
one.
vicinity.
Yes.
Beautiful.
And I was like, oh, is this a bit cheesy? Is this too kind of fabricated? But, man.
Fucking everyone loved
that
it.
love circle we had going for the next hour was
You would have been pretty
epic.
popular with the crowd.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know because I was just lost in the lasers. It was one of the best shows of all time. But,
Fuck,
Yeah,
when was
that would have been
that?
sweet. River Stage, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Wow.
that must have been around 2010, I think.
Wow,
Yeah,
I
that was
would've
a
loved
while
to see
ago.
that.
Yeah, it was sick. Yeah, open with Robot Rock, just the greatest ever.
One of the
Yeah.
best to ever do it, Daft Punk.
Dude, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just telling the girlfriend we need to watch Tron Legacy. We did
Wow.
the whole soundtrack and she's never watched it. And I'm like, oh, you probably should. It's visually stunning and it sounds even better.
Yeah. Well, my little dude is 3, and he's just loving cartoons, and he's getting into music that I like to. So he just likes something new. So I'm going to get him to watch the Interstellar Quadruple Drive.
I was about to
Yeah.
bring that up.
Yeah, we want to watch this with someone for years, and no one's ever interested. So yeah, if I have
Yeah.
to drive a child along to do it, done.
Finally, I have a
Yeah,
friend.
yeah. But no, it's a wild time. It really is.
So, Canwell, we kind of have the good idea of what you guys do there. How about elevated extracts? How's that work? You guys don't own a farm, though.
Not yet.
Not
No.
yet.
So yeah, I mean that's a long.
Bit of a pipe dream, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of also where one of the dreams started. Like a lot of people in this, who have entered and still in the industry or tried to, it was like, what we need to do is grow a farm. And then after about 5 minutes of thinking, we're like, oh, we've never worked on a farm before. We've actually never grown weed. Like, there was
We're
a-
city boys.
Yeah, there was a lot. Yeah, then you start reading about, the spider bites and everything that goes with it, and start hearing some horror stories. So for us, it was like, look, let's let the experts do what they do. There's world-class facilities like what Can Group's got going down in Melbourne. There's really slick bespoke grows like with like Joel's got going in Byron, and there's new ones popping up all over the place, So there's some talent out there. So what we're doing at the moment, I guess, is trying to work with them, get the right products. I guess our big thing, like we said, is affordable pricing is one of them, right? So, we got the one strain, the Northern Lights, that we've done for the $2.99 for 30 grams.
Damn.
I think
good.
conversation we're allowed to mention this. Yeah, I mean, and that's one we chose that particular strain just because it's, it's only 16% THC, test up to 18, but call it 16. So it's okay for new patients who actually are coming in and have never experienced cannabis before.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can get your OGs, who've been smoking for 30 years and they still just
Still
love
enjoy
it.
it.
Yeah, because of the terpene profile and and everything else that comes
Pretty
with
classic
it.
strain.
Oh, it's very
Such a-
nostalgic. Yeah, you talked to a lot of patients
Talk
about
to anyone
it.
over
Yeah.
50, they'll be like, fuck yeah, the Northern Lights, bro. Like,
Yeah. Yep.
It's a very 90s strain because I think that's when it was the Cannabis Cup winner. I think it was 98, somewhere around there. I'm pretty sure Northern Lights won that.
Yeah, he got a gong last year. I mean, it lives on. Yeah, it's a favourite. Yeah, but everything else we're capping for the short term, for now anyway, at 350 for 30 grams. You know, so we've got another 4
Strange at the moment, yeah. So we've got the raw Moby, so the THC 20. So we've got that at 350. We've got a sweet skunk that we've just launched, which is another 16% sativa. Same thing for 350 for 30 grams. Then we've got the Sandra that's coming out, which is a unique cultivar.
Yeah,
which is coming
that's
out.
exciting. That's hitting at that label claims 26%.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's actually
That's
testing
exciting.
as high as 28, and terpene profile is chef's kiss.
I'm excited for that.
Yeah, and then a Deadhead OG that's rolling out as well.
Deadhead
so they're
OG.
both the next fortnight. So
I don't know if I've had a deadhead.
it's not a show at the moment. I've tried in the States, haven't had it domestically here. But look, with this, you know, there is the trial and error. It's that roller coaster we were talking about before. There is some batch inconsistencies that we'll call out for our own product, you know, that we've experienced.
I think
But for
every
us, it's
supplier's
just
had
getting
issues.
it right. Yeah, I mean, there's realities to a bio product as well, you know.
For sure, yeah.
But for us, there's acceptable and unacceptable. So there's things where it's like, look, you know, is this terpene profile, is this strain for you? Yes or no? That's one filter. And then if it's a quality issue, it's like, look, is this reasonable? Or is this like, no, this isn't reasonable, in which case, obviously, people need to be looked after. So,
That's great. I'm glad you have like that set of standards that you treat everybody to. You know.
Well, we
Have
all
to.
want good weed.
Yeah.
I like basic.
You know?
Yeah,
like-
no, cheers. Or what we don't want is to people go, oh, it's cheap because it's shit. And that's, look, I mean, that's something that people try to put out as a perception is like, oh, if you want good weed, you need to pay top dollar. And it's like, yeah, you're going to have to explain that size to me first, buddy, because you can grow excellent weed at an affordable price.
That's it.
You know?
Well, I mean,
Absolutely.
Oregon, you've got $600 pounds. You know, like...
Yeah, there are parts of the world that have figured it out. And besides, like if cannabis is going to be a medicinal, you know, if it's going to be an experience that people look for healing for, it should be
affordable.
something that's accessible to, you know, the vast majority of people.
Oh, absolutely. And look, I mean, I'm not going to call out any other companies here because we wholeheartedly support anyone that's doing the right thing in the industry. So if your doctor's doing great, there's no need to come to Canwell. If you're experiencing great results with the product you've got, there's no need to transition to Elevated. But we do know that there's this is a little, you know, behind the curtain look at the industry. Some of the flower, one particular strain we're selling, for example, there is other brands selling the same one. The price difference, though, is immense.
Like
So-
the first one that comes to mind to me is the Rocky, right? The ANTG Rocky. It's so expensive, and it's like apparently a 30%, but I think it tests more around the 27.8 mark.
Right.
But it's really not very good. Like, it's a very okay strain. It's not bad. I'm sure it works for some people. It's just, I don't know. I've been around weed, and I'm like, it's okay, but the price that it is, I think it's somewhere around what, like $210 for the 10 grams, and you're like, ooh, fuck, bro. Like,
That high, huh? Yeah.
you know, like that's you guys are sitting at 350. It's sitting at 600 something for the 30.
And it's a big difference. Like that extra $15 or $20 makes a big
huge.
difference for a lot of people. It's a difference between able to afford it or not.
Yeah,
you know?
without a doubt.
And that was the whole thing: is equal access. It's trying to bring it with some of the black market price parity, so that patients can transition and start to afford it, to offer that easyable, affordable kind of cannabis.
You know what's great about that is that you're bringing people from, you know, lower socioeconomic strata out of a position where they could be criminalized for their use of cannabis.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually a really underrated aspect of the whole scheme, is that it gives people, you know, opportunity in their lives, not just to get better cannabis at, like, you know, a reasonable price, or to, you know, have a kind of medical approach towards how they use cannabis, but also just not having to deal with the kind of legal strife that emerges.
which is
being on the
massive,
platform.
right?
It is huge, but here's like the kicker of it. It's like a lot of people that come from that lower socio area, how are they smoking it, right? How are they vaping it?
Yeah.
They're not generally. They're normally smoking it through a bong, and that can still get them in trouble, especially in Queensland. And I think most other states still have issues with bongs. That's one of the things we're looking to maybe push in the future, to try and push for legislation change for medicinal patients to not be judged on how they consume it.
Yeah,
I
like the device
understand-
laws are kind of outdated. in
I
some
understand
ways.
that the doctor cannot say, yeah, you can have this through a bong, mate. Like, the doctor should never have to say such a thing, because obviously there are some implications there with bronchitis, a bit of phlegm, you know. It's not...
typically inhaling anything that isn't oxygen is probably not that good for you.
You know, a vaporizer, you know, they've just managed to pass the bar a little bit, you know. But I don't think, you know, should anyone be criminalized for having a bong? No, because I know some medicinal patients who have vapes and, like, they use it, but it doesn't help with some of their chronic pain like a bong does. You know, like, they have to rip, like, 1 or 2 really large, you know, amounts of cannabis in one quick hit to actually get the relief that they're looking for. Otherwise, it's still the same amount of pain. They're just having to hit on a vape for, like, fucking 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And some people just don't have that time or patience or attention span, or it just doesn't actually end up working. So I think that's one of the little flaws of the medicinal program. I am all for vapes. I am a vape lord through and through. Like, I really prefer vaporizers overall, but I can't say I don't enjoy having a joint or a bong every now and then and helping it with the symptoms. Like, a bong before bed, I'm definitely going to sleep. A vape before bed, I might still be awake.
Yeah.
Like, it can kind of keep me up more than a bong would. But, you know, and
Different
that's,
strokes
it's
for
that-
different folks,
Well,
hey?
That's it.
I'd
Different
also-
tokes for different folks.
Good
I mean,
point.
I'd prefer an Aston Martin too, but unfortunately, that's not always the option. I mean, like, the Mighty Manic's sick.
Yeah,
But,
no, that's what I recommend to
for
anyone that's a bong user.
$500, I mean,
Yeah.
you've just done your first consultation. You've
Yeah.
just got prescribed your first medicinal cannabis.
That's a really
your
good
And
point.
fucking
now
head's already
spend
spinning with how
all
much
that
you've just
money
spent.
and more
Yeah.
for your vape.
And now here's the good news: an extra $500 on top. You know,
Yeah.
like, and if you can afford it, then I mean, you're laughing because
Absolutely.
they're awesome. You
Yeah,
know,
it's a
like,
top-
and I mean,
top
the
level
flavor profile,
experience.
everything about it is great.
There's
but-
a few little flaws with it, but yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Cleaning
yeah.
that thing is the fucking worst. Cleaning a Mighty is like the worst vape on the market, and the fact that it can't fucking stand up.
Well, when you're trying to get bong hits out of it, then yeah.
I've got a bong attachment actually for my Mighty.
Nice.
So you can, like, plug it in and you can put it into the water pipe so it filters through, and that's fucking sick.
Yeah, nice.
You
We're
know-
actually committing to the volcano this week.
Oh, very cool.
Time's up. Yeah, it has to happen.
If you want a classic, I can sort you out one for 300.
300.
Yeah, just a classic though.
Oh.
Anyway, doing deals on the podcast. I like it.
Classic Yosip behavior.
I will tell you, before I started Fab, from about 2014 to about 2017, I used to flip volcanoes. I'd look on Gumtree, and I think Marketplace maybe just started hitting off, but it was mainly Gumtree. I'd find them for $250, $350, and add $50 to $100 and just do the flip.
Nice.
Partly because I wanted vapes at all my mates' places.
Don't have to bring your volcano over every time.
I was getting sick of it, so I do buy and trade in vaporizers. Thank you very much.
Nice.
Not really anymore, but we've just happened to got a spare.
Yeah. But I mean, the vape market is definitely interesting at the moment as well. You know,
For sure.
for dry bud, obviously, you know, great to see a few cheaper alternatives brought on. Just, you know,
There's some decent little vapes. I actually give this out to all the viewers and all the patients. The best vape, in my opinion, value for money is the Airizer Solo 2.
Yeah, okay.
If you guys have you guys tried it?
Is that with the glass pipe on
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
That one's really good because one, the battery's really good. They retail for $300, but often drop down to $220 to $250 on a discount. So pretty cheap. The battery lasts longer than the Mighty.
Yeah.
Chamber's a bit smaller, but the thing is that stem, all you have to do is drop it in isopropyl and it's clean within like 10 minutes. You just
Yeah,
take it out
okay,
and
right.
it's so much easier. And yeah, I don't know. Price-wise, it hits really well. And I think I call it like the medicated driver. Like, it's a really strong like power horse of a vape. So I pushed that one. I've tried like fucking 20 vapes on the market. So I know my vapes.
You
That
get like a
fucking
good
wins.
terpene
And it's
profile
tasty as
from
hell
it.
because of the
Yeah,
glass.
nice.
But the Mighty is by far the best hitter. By far. There is the Tiny Mite. That is not made by Stores and Bickle. It's like, I think it's made in like Holland or no, Finland, somewhere there. It's like a weird small operation, but it works like a Mighty mixed with a Solo. It's got a little glass stem like that, but it's got removable 18650 batteries, so you can easily swap them out. USB-C charging as well.
Nice.
And 5-second heat up time.
Yeah, okay.
That's the exciting thing about the space. It's like, you know, you still have innovation occurring, even though you have market leaders like Stores and Bickle who have, you know, produced
20 plus years.
absolutely classic products.
It's
pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh, on a global level as well. I mean, that's what's so exciting about the domestic industry at the moment is, I mean, we can see what's happened over the last decade in the the territories that have good stuff going.
Mm.
And I mean, we're
We're
2 steps into an
behind.
ultramarathon here. Like, it's absolutely unbelievable, and it's funny, when we speak to people who want to get into the space and they're like, you guys have come in at such a good time. It's like, right now there's someone who's not even thinking about cannabis who's going to be crushing this space in the next 5 years.
Yeah, really good
Like,
point.
there's-
There are jobs that we don't even know exist yet.
Oh
for sure.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I mean, from the the digital perspective, from the product perspective, from the consumption perspective, the comms perspective,
The grow, the transport, there's all
yeah,
niche things
man.
within it that are still yet to find.
Such an industry that's like just emerging, and it's like just such a rumble underneath, and it's like,
Yeah.
when does this bubble pop and we just go fucking nuts?
yeah,
Yeah, there'll be like a Henry Ford of cannabis or something,
That's probably
That's
cookies
it.
at this point.
that's it. I mean, yeah,
Homemade
they're
from
making the way
cookies.
to our shores at the moment, aren't
Apparently,
Yeah.
I'm intrigued to see how that goes. That should be
they? There's a lot of
interesting one.
intrigue at the moment. Yeah, a lot of people come here with a lot of wild angles to come
Yeah,
in.
we'll see. I think it's still a little too regulated here for people like from the US to really be interested here.
Yeah.
The US really likes the gunsling, like fucking let me do what I want. Just leave me alone, and that's where they're doing all the candies, the nerds like gummy ropes and all that shit. Like, it's just such a looser market there.
Yeah.
Not even just on the rec side, even before then, the medical side there, it was so much more loose than it is here.
I think that's why we advocate like so strongly for continued reform, because as much as what we have currently is actually fantastic, and allows for a lot of opportunity for people to enter into a new world, if that makes any sense. There's so much more that can be done to make like Australia a superpower
Yeah.
when it comes to this kind of thing.
Absolutely.
It's a bit like the legal framework's like 10 or 20 years behind where people are actually at. And it's the same way with, other issues. A great example would be like, renewables. The amount of opportunity that we have is like a first world, incredibly abundant in terms of resources country where we could literally just produce all of this stuff ourselves and then export it, Could
Yeah.
be the center of the world when it comes to that thing. So
Absolutely. And that's why these the gnarly regulations we have domestically here, actually. I mean, we're having some very exciting conversations with some buyers in Germany, Israel, Malta, because the Australian standards are so ridiculously high.
Yeah.
We're at a global level, so the products we've got can very quickly be substituted in. Where, I mean, half the stuff you get from the States, you're either going to get the best cannabis you've ever had in your life, or some complete dog shit that could have come out of someone's shed, like it's...
yeah, that's the flip
difficult.
side of it is that,
Yeah.
you don't really get a whole lot of like, crap or mid type stuff here on the Australian market because it's such a, refined, almost regulated
I
level.
had some crap on the medical market.
I mean, yeah, it would exist, but if you
I
look at the
have.
proportion of
It
like...
came from Canada though, so
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
right.
this is the thing, like a lot of our stuff here in Australia is actually produced overseas. Like we still have a long way
Yeah.
to go when it comes to like, existing on par with a lot of these places in Europe and the US and Canada.
And
But
a
even
lot of-
I was going to say, even the overseas stuff still got to be tested and meet certain marks, what
Right,
I mean?
it's all
So,
GMP
in comparison to the
and-
black market I've had, like you say, there is some less quality maybe on the medical market, but in terms of comparing to what I
Consistency.
used to get on the black market, which was always a
The
bit of a
peach.
gamble, and you never knew what you were going to get, you never knew how it was grown. At least here, there is that consistency and those
Yeah.
requirements that need to be met.
Yeah,
so
I
you
tell
know
you
you're
what, I've
getting
been stung way
qualified.
more times on the black market.
Yeah,
that's
for sure.
it. Yeah.
yeah, despite what Reddit would tell you. I mean,
No.
these people seem to be getting the absolute fire for free. I don't know why they even looked at the medical market, but...
Though I'll tell you, there was one tub of medical, and I'm not going to shame the company because they do a pretty good job most of the time. But I got this tub. I opened it up outside the clinic in my car. I was like, fuck yeah, let's give this a sniff. And you know how you do. And I fucking opened it, and it was like all leaf. Like, it was just trim. There was no buds. There was like maybe 2. And I was like, what the actual fuck? I went back, and I got my money back and everything. Some dealers might not do that.
Yeah, that's the thing.
But I was like blown away that could pass quality control. But I was told the reason that kind of happens is some of the flower people, they're not full vertical yet, so they have to send it off site to someone else to process the flower, put it into the containers, and that person's not part of their company or their standards, and they don't have a fucking clue what they maybe were doing exactly. And that's how things kind of get pushed into the line where it's like, this could have been quality checked a
Yeah,
little
so
better.
like that's a good example of how, things could be improved, at least in some aspects or some parts of the industry. It's like that, that integration across different levels of the chain,
Yeah,
and I guess that is happening. It's a work in progress,
100%. I mean, I think it's taking responsibility, right?
Yeah.
Like, This is putting it all on the table. You know, we actually had one time we had a patient call up and say, "Hey, I got this. Send us some photos." And it was unacceptable. I mean, it wasn't quite as bad as what you've described.
It happens.
Yeah, but it was too dry, and I wasn't like, this is a preference thing, or come on, you know, there's going to be a bit of variance from crop to crop. It was like, this is why this person's left the black market.
Yeah.
You know, they've come in to get it, so it should be replaced.
Yeah.
And as we said earlier, I mean, we didn't grow this stuff. It wasn't our fault, but we're willing to switch it out, do the refund as well. And if you're working with the right suppliers, they will do the same thing as well. Anyone who won't fess up for their lack of quality, I mean, that's where you should. That's where we will start talking shit on the competition, is when they're fucking over patients, you know. Because some are, you know, arguably just have a little bit of insomnia and trying to get some sleep, but other people are dealing with some very serious stuff, you know. And they can't be done over like that.
Yeah, you've got to treat people with respect.
Yeah,
especially when you're doing it on a above board level, you know.
Yeah, no. So I mean, that's my only request for any elevated extract patients out there listening. Expect something great. If it's not up to standard, speak to us. And then if you're not satisfied with how it goes from there, rinse this wherever you can. You know,
Great message.
And do the same for everyone. Yeah, go on a rampage. All we can do is what we would expect. You know, like it's. That's it. But I mean, anyone who's going to promise you that it's going to be exactly the same every time they're not dealing with plants. You know,
that's
they're
the
dealing
thing.
with bullshit.
I mean, like, even under the most strict, I don't know, like controlled conditions, you've still got all of this variance.
Yeah.
You know, phenotypically and all of this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Now, is that the variance from a 7 to a 9 out of 10 versus a 2 to 9 out of 10? I mean, you want to have a level of consistency, but...
Yeah, it's you pick one plant one day earlier or one day later, and you got a completely different vibe.
Really good point.
Top or bottom of the plant. You know?
That as well. That's a big one.
Yeah. And also personal preference. You know, like I'm I don't know, maybe this is below brow Logan stuff, but I actually don't mind my bud slightly drier.
Yeah, sure.
Because I'm not putting Instagram pictures up on my sticky fingers covered in resin and shit. I'm trying to get this smoke happening and move it on with my life, you know.
I remember back in the day a black market bag. It was an ounce, and it was like one of those smaller, not a sandwich bag, but you know, like the snack bag.
Yeah.
It's packed with nugs, fairly small, about this big, but dry as shit. So you could like pick it up.
And it
crush
crumbled.
it with your fingers and just put it in your comics. And you're like,
no grinder required.
And I was like, this is the best fucking weed ever. And then you kind of have it, you're like, but like, the fact that you didn't have to chop anything or anything, you're like, I don't know what I prefer.
Yeah.
But, okay, you're more into the dry.
No, so I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not looking to be Thanos here and turn this shit to dust, but you know, I don't want to be clogging up my grinder necessarily either.
That's really good point.
Are you guys more sativa guys, more indica guys? What are your favorite strains?
Yeah, I always thought I was a sativa guy until I went medical and started smoking some indica.
Yeah.
I think my preference still lies in the sativa world, but I've really been enjoying my indicas lately.
I've kind of been in that same mark. Like, I am way more sativa, but man, some good indicas really are good.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, I can mellow out, but what I like is I like the sativa at the end of the day to kind of pick me back up, and then I'll go into an indica and chill back down.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I don't think I've ever smoked a sativa and been like, I can't sleep off this sativa. It's driving me crazy.
Oh, I have.
You have?
Yeah, fucking
okay.
Durban Poison. A Durban Poison's like a straight pure landrace sativa.
Yep.
Fucking din 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 din, like just ideas. It's like just brain will not switch off.
Yeah, okay.
There's a couple sativas that really just activate.
Yeah,
Like,
sometimes I'll smoke a sativa and I will just be... It will be like having too much coffee.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like subtly too scat
yeah.
in a way where I can still do my best to focus on things, but actually it would have been better if I perhaps took less. You know what I mean?
Right.
It might even just be a level of like how much I've decided to take of
Yeah,
that
a
sativa.
sativa, I feel like you can kind of like, not to say you overdose,
It's easier
but you
to do that.
You're
right?
having a little more than you should have. Because normally I find sativa is easier to kind of consume as well.
It's a bit like when I use THC oil.
Yeah.
If I just, for instance, if I'm not supplementing it with CBD consistently, it's easy to end up in that space where, and it could be like you say, a personal preference and a kind of difference in my neurochemistry. Some people may just love going really hard on the THC, but it's almost like there's too much going on at the moment, and I need to maybe counteract that with something else, you know.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I often
Yeah, where do you
it's
sit?
depressing to say out loud, but I mean, I feel like I often smoke by myself. And it's normally because I'll have a smoke before I go for a run or something.
Yeah,
so that's
yeah.
why I've always gone for a sativa. But I do notice if I'm on the phone after, that's where maybe I'm a bit of a motor mouth and it's like, okay, wait a minute, maybe this is what
Yeah.
people are talking about.
Sure.
I'm very quickly becoming one of these insufferable people though who are like, is there really, you know,
No,
is
no,
anything
no,
truly
I
indica
get
or
you.
sativa, you know, like,
I get you.
'cause
There's too
everything is
many
a hybrid.
hybrids on the market.
Exactly. So I was like, can I really,
When
I mean,
you
I'm
get
finding myself
something
looking at
that's-
leaf shapes and shit trying to
Yeah.
work this out.
You
It's
know,
like, no, I'm just,
I think this is
Hi.
kind of it gets into like the entourage effect
Yeah.
type space where in this discussion, because you end up, you know, looking at how terpenes influence things and how all the different components of cannabis as this whole plant medicine kind of impact it, and then the level of genetic variance where there is no, or not that many, like pure indicas or sativas that are actually used by people in the 2020s. It's gotten to this stage where like the genetic crossbreeding has kind of like blurred those lines to an indistinguishable level.
Yeah.
But still, I think there's, you know, you'll smoke something and you'll know what its subjective effect
Yeah,
is on
what
you,
it-
even
what
if
it's
you can't
giving you
describe
more
it.
of.
Yeah. It's funny that the strains of the moment remind me of. I mean, I was working bars when I was younger, and there was a period of time when everybody would come in and they had a shot they came up with,
Yeah.
and I feel like
It's kind of
almost like that with strains at the moment. You know?
Definitely.
There's all the classics, but everyone's like, "Oh, I've come up with this."
Yeah, no, I
crossbreed,
know.
okay.
I've
I
met a
think
few
it's-
breeders.
Yeah.
You know, you get the fucking peanut butter jelly breath. You know.
Yeah.
Or
I think
Yeah,
that's
it's
the time they come
actually-
up with the wacky name reverse.
It's
the
actually
plant, you know.
quite impressive how creative people are with the names.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes it feel like such an expansive territory.
Yeah.
It's like,
And confusing because the old school names, you used to be able to understand the lineage and the strains and where they came from.
that branch has long since like faded. in a way.
Exactly. It's like there's been so much breeding going. It's like I've got no, based on the name, I've got no clue what kind of plant this is anymore. You know what I mean?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
you've locked it.
The interesting thing about
Yeah, just turn. If that's a handle, that's weird. Just go one way. Yeah, there we go.
That
handle's been-
it's broken, man. It's fucked. The weird thing about like existing in like the modern space, I think, with cannabis is that you don't necessarily like the line of this comes from this part of the world, this comes from this part of the world. All of that has kind of like just disappeared.
Yeah.
It's gotten to a stage where like you might have certain strains that are really big in California or in Canada or like one part of the world, but the level of like integrated globalization it's kind of touched every single industry.
It really has.
It's kind of how you can find like a fruit from like, you know, Spain or something just
Yeah.
at the shelf at Coles or something.
Exactly. And there are these kind of black market, underworld cultures out there where people are sending different phenotypes of different strains
yeah.
all over the world.
Right.
They're learning how to test and grow in the different climates, well,
Yeah.
understand where it grows better. Like
When
there's
when you meet a fucking breeder, oh man, like you can't get them to shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Like about the genetics, it's insane. Like,
Yeah.
And I respect the shit out of it, but it's like holy fuck, I know cannabis pretty well, but then they're just like pew, pew, all over the
They're
head.
like
sometimes.
scientists, honestly. They're like these underground guys that are like scientists of how this plant's grown, how it's best grown, the climates it's grown, the
Yeah.
nutrients you need to give it. It's unbelievable the level of knowledge that exists
For sure.
in the
Completely
black market.
hidden.
Yeah,
it's-
exactly. And it'll be nice when it hits a tipping point where some of those people who have been doing this for decades
End up in the academic
end
side.
up in the industry.
Yeah,
you know what I
yeah.
mean?
Yeah, please. If you're one of these people, go do an agriculture course or something. Just do
Yeah.
anything to get your foot in the door because the industry needs you.
The problem is, I've seen a lot of the growing jobs. They're all like police check and drug tests, and you're like, well, that's fucked. How do you know you're growing a good product? You know,
Yeah.
like
Good point.
Yeah.
Really good point.
Yeah.
it's that's a weird one because you can't get the people that know what the fuck they're doing very easily in. Some have managed to. I've seen a few, but most, you know, like they're just afraid of that check.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
of all of that. So I don't know. They just sit in a very strange area.
Yeah.
I did last year, at the end of last year, I was just searching in Google and I saw there was a certificate 4 in cannabis cultivation. It was like, I think horticulture or something. No, it wasn't set up with anyone, but it was the actual program of like the units and stuff on the TAFE website. So like, it's like a coming soon.
Nice.
And I was like, fuck, I'd take that. I wouldn't even work in the industry. I'd just fucking do it just because I'd be around weed and shit. Like, that'd be some good content for Fab. Like, yeah. But I think that's
Interesting.
going to pop off soon. I think it was like a Cert 4 in horticulture, but then like specializing in cannabis cultivation.
Yeah.
So maybe that dealt with like, the trimming aspects and day-night cycles, or I don't like the units were broken down. If you do a Google for Cert 4 cannabis, you'll find something.
That's good. I mean, it's good they're starting to think about it, because even from a doctor's perspective, I don't think there's that much education when they're going through their degrees about cannabis. So the fact that they're turning it
definitely
on,
not.
They
is
need
a
a
good thing.
unit, They need one unit, alternative medicines. And
Yeah.
cannabis is maybe like half that unit.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Especially when you're talking about, I mean, cannabis isn't the only alternative medicine out there. You've
Exactly,
got,
yeah.
TCM, all those other kind of experiences that people are seeking out because they're not getting what they need from the kind of hammer, almost like chainsaw approach that Western
Yeah.
medical science often offers people.
Oh, I mean, there's some up North Queensland. There's some Indigenous communities doing some really gnarly stuff with plant medicine. That's it's very exciting. But I mean, there's
sure.
no spotlight on it, and there's certainly not the mainstream acceptance. But
And that's the kind of like, I don't know, the disassociation between those high level institutions like, the medical community
yep,
and this kind of like weird academic stuff. And even the cannabis industry sits on one side, or, any kind of medical industry sits on one side, pharmaceuticals. And then you have people who have been practicing things for tens of thousands of years and hold much of the knowledge, but they
Yep.
don't have, there's no like, medium for them to communicate and integrate with each other. And
Yeah.
it's really interesting, like that space, that middle space for being a medium or being a communicator of high level science, or of like, that kind of low level, ground level
Yeah.
understanding and wisdom.
Yep.
That I think they kind of require one another. Like the kind of
100%.
connections that you can make as someone who sits in the middle trying to communicate between these things can be quite profound. The more that we can lift voices from the bottom to the top and vice versa, kind
Definitely.
of bring them to each other.
yeah,
Oh, that-
yeah.
That makes sense
yeah.
when you think about just modern medicine. It's all plant derived. Like our opiates come from the poppies,
Right.
Which someone I think probably in Afghanistan would have known about, or maybe it was the Chinese with the opium and all of that.
Well, you have like antibiotics, which are found in like the deepest parts of the jungles that remain on Earth. You know what I mean? That kind of
the cocaine, that's your stimulants for I don't know if it's a Ritalin or
Yeah, the coca plant.
the coca plant, but basically it's all just like super concentrated of that one drug, and they produce it into a pharmaceutical pill rather than a powder that someone snorts.
Yeah.
But it's like kind of the same things happened with cannabis. If we think about like the concentration of oil where we got into dabs and stuff, it's like we're just kind of exploiting the plant as much as we can to kind of give it its effect. And it's one of the things I've watched or read, I don't even know where it came from, but it was like that's actually where a lot of the problems with drug addiction are coming in. It's we're kind of forcing the plant into so much concentration that's too much for us, when we should have been having it in the moderation of like, say, the flower form. The coca leaves, apparently it would have been just better for us to just chew coca leaves for an energy buzz instead of having coffees or whatever. The opium, I think there was some way of consuming that so it wasn't just so overwhelming to knock you out. And then the super special circumstances where you need that concentrated form, that's when you would give it to people. But
It's
handing
kind of
out
a
people, like,
byproduct of living in a world which is like technologically, established. You have this kind of development of Western medical science and just, Western society and culture in general, or I don't know what you would call it, like modernity in a way.
Yeah.
So, we've almost like, at this point in time, our civilization, our society has opened that book, and it's also almost like Pandora's box, like impossible to close. But it's simultaneously like the kind of responsibility that we take when we develop these sorts of things.
Yeah.
Like, it's sort of like having the nuclear bomb. You can never friggin' use it. Or if you do, it has to be under like extraneous circumstances.
Yep.
And I think that's sort of how we should be approaching, high concentrations of drugs as well. It's like, it's an extreme scenario. It's not something that, we've co-evolved alongside for, millions of years or whatever.
That's it, because there is a nuclear bomb, but I mean, the humble sword will still do the job, So like,
There
well,
are
I'm
other
bringing out
weapons.
these insane dabs. Yeah, I think that there's also like the room at the table for the rudimentary, introductory cannabis. If it's just that flower, that you smoke. Well, I mean, even going back to chewing leaves or blue and PNG, whatever it might be. Like, there's a lot to be said, and it's that. It goes full circle back to like, is it recreational or medicine? That bit in the middle is easy with insomnia and anxiety and that type of stuff. But I mean, for me, it's the research coming out of places like Israel, what Olivia Newton-John Foundation is doing down in Melbourne. That's where it starts going like, okay, what do high concentrations actually do? Other
Yeah.
than send you to the moon, which,
Yeah.
sure, there's a place for that. But what can this do to actually, save or, if nothing else, dramatically improve lives?
Yeah, I mean, especially in the case of people with chronic or life-threatening conditions, maybe high concentrations of a certain thing are exactly what they need in an isolated case.
Yeah.
Or there are examples of like use case along many different forms of dosage or like formulation of the substance. So
Yeah.
that's interesting, is that what you bring up is like the potential that emerges out of living in a modern society where we've developed all these modern solutions to modern problems.
Yeah. And this is where I think that the language and what you guys are doing is so important, is you can be talking about the same thing. So, I mean, we talk about, smoking weed with the boy. I mean, the boys were, dying of Hutchinson's or brain cancer, and it's medicinal shit we're doing at the time, but we were doing a culturally black market, so it seemed like that. So that's language we're used to. Where if you're talking to a mum and dad or a medical audience or something, then it is utilizing the power of the cannabis plant to activate the endocannabinoid system to reach the. So and both of those conversations are important depending on who you're speaking to.
For sure.
It's just such a sad reality that it is the same conversation. And even for those of us who have been living it now for decades, it still feels like a bit of bullshit sometimes, even though it is undoubtedly a fact that this is a pretty fucking amazing plant.
Yeah, it's so real.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. And it'd be nice. I mean, and it's happening. We are seeing some of the leading doctors in this space are the most relaxed and liberal when they're talking about it. They do acknowledge that there is a multi-generational global culture that surrounds this plant outside
ignorant
of
to ignore
the
that.
fucking handcuffs that the Australian regulations put on it. So it's
For sure.
for us it's super exciting because this is chapter 1 of the Australian industry, and it's foreshadowed by all the epicness that's happening around the world, from places like the States to Amsterdam to Germany, Malta, beyond, it's a good time for the industry.
Yeah.
Sure is. Good
Yeah.
time for Aussies to be, in it as well, I think.
Well, fingers crossed. yeah.
For you two.
Yeah, no, fingers crossed. No, it is though, it's
We're in a good position.
we're in
I
a great
think, here.
position, yeah.
Yeah, I think Australia can really leverage a lot of this if governments really put a bit of investment into it as well. Like, have we even seen much government investment? Not really. If they started going, well, let's fucking do one of our own farms and, kind of a public-private sort of mix, it's like, what happens then? And it's like a global export, fucking Aussie weed, Australian-made stickers all over the world. We love it.
Yeah, yeah. We've got the climate, we've got the quality. I mean, guys
got
like
the-
Drive Change are making
Tom,
Tom and David and that, they're doing incredible stuff there, and that seems to be one of the forward conversations at the moment. And if we do get
sure.
medical equity across driving laws,
Yeah,
I think we're going to see a tipping point that
that's
most of
to
the
me that's
industry is not even ready
legalization
for
at that
it.
point.
Yeah, we're almost there. We're as good as there. That, and if we can get Medicare for telehealth, then we're laughing.
Yeah, if the consults could be done, that would be good. Because I don't think we'll ever see the cannabis on the PBS. I know so many people are lobbying for it. Maybe some of the oils, but I don't think we'll see flour because of the variable change.
So
It'll
hard
be
to
like
test
a
it,
long
yeah.
time before you see it. Cause
That or it's a different system. It's not called the PBS for cannabis. That's all I could come up with.
Potentially. But I can see that happening at some point, at least for, the medicine. Because there's this revolution happening in, spaces of physical and mental health. And,
Yeah.
I think there will be a point in
There
time.
might be some form of
distant
subsidization. I just
future.
don't think it's under the PBS. Like when I've looked into the PBS, like way they actually allow for medicines, you got to pay like $500,000 just to get your stuff approved to go on it, like to get tested to try and go on it.
Yeah.
And it's like that batch of cannabis isn't even worth $500,000.
And like you said, I mean, you've got to get it tested on ARTG before it even be thought
Yeah.
about to put on the PBS. To get it tested and clinically proven, it's going to be difficult for a flower just because of that variance.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's like it has to be precise every single time the same flower. So I don't know if we ever will see it on the PBS.
It could be
I think by the
something
time
new.
it gets there, we might be flipping into that recreational type market.
See, and that's, I think, one of those interesting things. What happens to the medicinal market once the recreational comes in? I think there's still a validity entirely in the doctors helping prescribe and all of that. That's not going to go away, but who's the supplier? Is it going to be the rec clinics, or is it going to be the medicinal clinics, or are they each going to be individual? I think there's like a lot of questions there once that happens. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Because we all kind of see it as the same flower, right? It's ultimately the same product. It's just how it's used.
So the two parts of answering it, I think as far as what happens to the medical industry, so as far as the advice side goes, I think it becomes super specialized, you know, and people like your Dr. Chang, your Dr. Kales, who are unbelievably well read and well versed in this space, they will be treating people with very serious ailments from you know, your epilepsies, your Parkinson's, where we're seeing some great stuff, your endo for fucking poor women out there suffering from that. I'm not sure if you read much on that, but it sounds like an absolute bloody nightmare.
We're very lucky being men, I will say. Like, after you hear some of that, and you're just like...
The source script, and I mean, cannabis seems to be a huge one for that, which is exciting. So I think there'll be some real specialization there with you know, cancer treatment and stuff, and I think there'll be a handful of kind of rich or very skeptical people who still want to see that doctor for anxiety or sleep or something. I think everyone else who kind of gets it will just end up buying it through whoever that is, which is the second answer from mine is... We always get the question of, you guys say you advocate for recreational, does that take your job away? It's like, no, I mean, alcohol is recreational. I can't set up a fucking moonshine stand out the front. Like, it still needs to be through a licensed venue.
Do you think it's going to go through pharmacies in the future?
Yeah, I think it'll be pharmacies. I think when we talk recreational, for me, we're talking Schedule 2 or 3. It's still something you need to go to a licensed dispensary, for lack of a better word for.
Do you think we need to have pharmacists being the ones to dispense, though? I think that's one of the things I've been kind of curious about. I think that's, to me, what my issue is with the medical industry right now is, like, you have the doctors and the pharmacists, and it seems like their jobs are a little redundant at one point. Like, do we really need to be putting their resources into being able to distribute this? You know? And even still, like, I like the US model, you know, being able to see and smell your product that's not coming in a tub and then you're having to peel it open. Like, I think that's part of, you know, maybe deciding what's right for you. I do wonder, like, where that's going to shift up a little bit.
That is interesting.
I think the tubs are good. I like the idea of, like, it's kind of pre-packaged because then you can do it on shelves and things and, you know, maybe there's a glass screen or whatever it is. But I do feel like, you know, being able to not sample, but, like, smell, look, and kind of get an idea of what it is. Because I think the smell is so bloody important to people because it's all personal preference.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same with your spirits. You know, someone likes a bourbon and doesn't like a vodka. They don't necessarily like something with lemon profiles in there, like lemony.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite important. Even if you can see what the terpenes are, it's like, yeah, but it doesn't mean that's exactly what it smells like.
No, and it can be quite jarring. I mean, that's one thing with the medicinal. I think Mitch, you mentioned earlier about how your mind state when you go into your smoke can, you know, affect where you go for it. And I mean, if you are new to the space, you open it up, hit with a hard chemical smell, shit, what is this I'm actually smoking? You're anxious, you have a smoke, it amplifies that. All of a sudden you're having a panic attack and you never want to touch the product again. I mean, that's, a worst case scenario versus something like the Northern Lights where you're, I'm in nature, you know, or pat a deer on the head or whatever it might be. But look, I'm going to be completely honest. Once it got to the point where if someone just wants to go and purchase some cannabis, they can go and do it. From there, if there's a little bit of annoyance, that sucks. But that can be the next generation's battle. As far as we're concerned, we just want to make it available.
That's it.
The pharmacy is a bit of a pain in the ass. Yeah, but I mean, I go there to get butter menthols half the time, you know. So I'm kind of used to living in Australia. It's a bit of a pain in the ass, but I'm guaranteed quality. Where America, it's when I'm over there, things are very easy. God knows what I'm having, you know, like, and, you know, when you go to other countries, you know, if you've ever holidayed in Bali or something, I mean, like, you need to be sure what you're getting is what you're getting.
That's it.
So, I don't know. Jury's out for me on that one. But I do believe it's coming. I would actually love to get my hands on, I'm not sure how you'd even get the stats, on who's actually growing in Canberra. Like, it'd be interesting to know.
I don't know if there's any, like, legal
taking
farms.
advantage of this.
I know there's, like, private individuals, of course.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any farms, because, like, it'd probably be New South Wales still, because, like, the ACT territory is pretty bloody tiny. I don't know how many farms you could fit there.
So, I mean, from the individual level, though, like, when things do loosen up, it'd be interesting to see. Whether
I do know they have one problem there: people just stealing the bloody plant.
Yeah,
because you have to grow it outdoor, and like people just jump the fence or whatever, and it's like fucking mine.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing about their current law is that hydro is basically prohibited there.
Right.
Isn't the purchase of seeds prohibited as well?
Yeah. So it's like, where do you get it from? I guess I just found it out in the bush, guys.
I think the ambiguity is, you know, it may be difficult for parliamentarians or people in positions of power to understand exactly what the experience is for people who grow.
Yeah.
And so they don't include it in the legislation. But I think another aspect of it is that they want to create a little bit of legal ambiguity so that the police actually have more of a say in terms of whether they press charges or prosecute
Bit
people.
discretionary with the police, you mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, is this person a fuckwit? Do we want to charge him? Nah, he's just a nice old dude that's just growing a couple plants. Yeah, all right, he's fine. Yeah, fucking go on then.
Yeah.
But if it's like,
kind of
oh, it's an
strange.
18-year-old, it looks like he's selling it to kids and shit. Like, you know, it's like, oh, we probably should charge him.
Tell you, I'll give you the hot tip. There is some old dudes out there that have been growing this illegally for decades, which, some of the characters we've met at this time, it's insane. I mean,
you're so right.
these old timers, man, they've got some tales to tell.
I had
They
a
do.
story
It's
a little-
fascinating, yeah.
And that's the kind of thing that, like, you don't want to lose that kind of generational
No way.
knowledge.
Yeah, that's why the
Very
culture is so
important.
important, yeah.
When we were talking about prices, I forgot to mention, like, I was thinking about, like, one of Michael Boulderstone, leader of the Hemp Party, now Legalised Cannabis Australia. They did the swap. But he advocates highly for $1 grams. Like, he doesn't think it should be more than $1. And I'm like, fuck, that's ambitious. But,
Man.
What's he basing that on, though?
well, he believes you completely can. Because
Nimbin
he's-
logic.
Nimbin logic. But also,
Sun and water.
I think it's kind of more on, like, you know, you're just growing outdoor and it's, like, not necessarily the highest of quality, but it's, like, just nice outdoor bush.
Yep.
Why should it be more than $1 or $2 a gram? And I'm like, I kind of don't disagree with him, but I'm like, fuck, that's ambitious. It would be nice,
Yeah.
but
Who's going to want to grow for you for that much, though, as well?
That's the thing. I think that if you're going to have an industry built around it, it kind of needs to sustain itself with a
Yeah.
certain level of price point. But I think in Michael Boulderstone's mind, I don't know exactly what he believes, but I believe that a lot of the old Nimbin hippies believe that it should be less commercialized and industrialized. It should be more of a
style.
Yeah.
you're growing it in your backyard type thing.
Yeah.
And in that case, I can see, and this is kind of, it touches on the difference between potentially like a very down to earth recreational model versus something that's more specialized and
Yeah.
medicinal. Potentially, a lot of where the industry develops is in the medicinal side, and a lot of what people are doing in their backyards remains in the recreational side, and you see like
That's the
still a
divide.
divergence in terms of the price point there.
Yep.
I would like to see pot clubs, you know, like Spain, where you
That
join
would be
a
kinda
club
cool.
and you grow for the members, and that's the only people that can buy from it, and all of that. And because you're a member, you can grow so many plants. And I'm like,
Not a
that
bad
seems
model.
like a fucking good way to do it, because it's like community driven, and then
Reminds
it's
me
all
of, like, gun
localized and
clubs.
everything. Yeah.
Very interesting.
You know, I'd love pot club sort of style. Like, one of my ambitions would be like opening up the Fab bloody, I don't even know what I'd call it. I just call it Fabs. And it'd be a bit of a board game, jazz club, vape lounge. And I
nice.
would like, you know, like the old Winchester kind of furniture, like big brown leather seats. and a
Yeah,
white button.
yeah.
Like really posh, but we're just fucking playing board games
Yeah,
and smoking
nice.
weed. Like, that's the kind of vibe, and you've got just chill music. I'd love that to exist. And then if that was a pot club on top, where, you know, you're members and that's where you're actually buying your weed from, that'd be sick. I just don't think that's going to be us. I don't think that's the Australian way. I don't think, unless maybe kind of like the RSL vibe.
What's Mull doing down in New South Wales?
Mull?
Sorry, in Victoria.
Yeah, Mull. They're like kind of like a
Smoke
little
on
partnership
premises.
of-
Like it's like an unlicensed.
That's pretty
cannabis,
cool.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can vape on premises with the idea that you're a medicinal patient and you can kind of back it. And I had that same idea last year. I was like, fuck, that would be what I'd want to do, isn't it? Just have like, I was actually thinking you'd have like an outdoor smokers area, but to actually go smoke, you'd have to donate a gold coin and
Nice.
that'd go towards some charity. And I'm
Yeah.
like, fucking just add a little extra there. And you have to show your script to go out and have that vape. Like, have your little container and your vape and off you go. It'd be fucking good, wouldn't it?
Would be. I mean, you
Endless
gotta think it's coming.
possibilities.
Yeah.
So are we opening a venue, boys?
I think that's where
Well.
we've landed. But no, I mean, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what comes off the back of these elections. But I mean, with or without that,
We're still moving.
Is happening, yeah. And you know, like I'm sure increasingly you're having friends, family, whoever send you stories on cannabis. You
That's
know,
it.
because it's bleeding into the mainstream, and yeah, you know, that's the evidence from literally everywhere else on the globe where it's gone legal has been from just overwhelming mainstream acceptance. You know,
Yeah.
once it's part of the zeitgeist, the job's done.
Yeah, we do have a very strong conservative class here. I think that's just our only little battle. I
Yeah.
think that's the only little battle we've got. We've got a lot of religious snuppies. Like
Yeah.
very hard.
I think
and
it's what's really instructive to me is that you look at the demographics in Australia and the people who, I think it's because we've just had such radical social change in the past 30, 40 years, 50 years. The people who are typically boomers or older they have such a different perspective on issues, and they side completely differently to the young folk. And the people who are maybe like Gen Xers sitting in the middle, they literally do sit in the middle of these issues, and they swing either way.
Yeah.
Like modern Australian politics, both socially, economically, politically, it's all stratified along those lines, old versus young. Which to me, you could say that there are a lot of people who say that people age and mature politically, and they get more conservative as they age. And perhaps that is a thing that
partly
occurs.
true, at least.
It definitely happened with the boomer generation, the baby boomers.
Yeah.
But something makes me, about this current political moment, makes me think that we've yet to have like an awakening in, a social movement yet. And that is still developing and still yet to occur with young people.
The new Labour Party, basically.
Well, yeah, something to actually corral people within a broader movement to make transformative change. And Australia is absolutely in need of it at this point in time.
Yeah.
We need someone with like courage and vision, not just someone, but a whole group of Australians who are willing to stand up for that, basically.
Yeah, and I think that last line is what you hit the nail on the head with. I think it has to be a group, and I think it has to be a traditional definition of a diverse group.
Yeah.
Because what the world seems to suffer from now is just hyperpolarization.
For sure.
Yeah.
So the cool thing about the cannabis thing is, for decades of like moving change and 420 days and this type of stuff, it hasn't been that aggressive finger in the chest that you see other movements kind of embrace.
Yeah, it's because we're criminalized, Like, it's
Yeah.
too scary to come out and be like, fuck yeah, I smoke weed. Oh, yeah? Fuck you, smoke it in jail, cunt.
Yeah, well, that's it. And I think if there's a lot of people saying they smoke weed for different reasons, if you're seeing Olympians saying they're doing it for recovery, if you're seeing artists saying they're doing it for creativity,
Absolutely.
if you're seeing doctors, politicians, whoever saying they're doing it to chill out with their fucking wife on the weekend, whatever the situation is, more of those voices that everyone goes, there's someone I relate to.
Yes.
Where if it's just one uniform, this is who a cannabis smoker or consumer is. For me, that's the worst possible thing that can happen, because the way society's set up at the moment, 50% of people are going to disagree just because it feels like that's what my side is after. Which
Yeah,
is
right.
Fucking nonsense. Yeah.
Yeah. The world is so fragmented at the
It's
moment.
weird, huh?
It is.
Yeah.
It totally is.
Yeah, it's
There's
crazy. You can find out one person, if they've got a strong opinion on one thing, you can
They
name
probably
5
already
other
have
things
this.
they've got a strong opinion on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's usually around their individuality, which is the ironic part of it. But cannabis somehow has avoided all this nonsense, which is cool, for the most part. I mean, you got to find, look,
There's
we probably
outliers.
get preachy for some people's, but you jump on, even looking at your Reddits and stuff, you get the most toxic platforms, and the cannabis corners of it are so chill. Here's my first attempt of a joint, and it's got 4,500 thumbs up. Cool.
I wonder why that is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just so relatable, whatever
Yeah,
it
it
is.
is.
If someone's rolled their first joint, had a panic attack, made sweet, sweet love, whatever it is, we've all been there with our cannabis experiences, and it's like,
It's a good
the
time.
rest of what you're going on doesn't matter. I can relate to that.
Without a doubt.
I think that's a good place to start wrapping.
Yeah, you reckon?
Yeah, we're at about an hour and a half. and
Wow.
Oh,
I
man,
think
that went
we've
quick.
Yeah,
we've
it was
had
a long
a
way.
good discussion of past, present, future.
Anything you
Anything
have
you
left
guys
to
want to
say?
share?
Yeah, anything you want to shout out in
Nah.
particular?
Dude, I think anything else we're going to shout out, 420 Seconds With, our
yeah.
YouTube page. So we're chatting with people like, Yosef,
I've been
Dr.
on that
Brian
one.
Walker,
It's a good
Lucy,
time.
who's running the United Compassion
Passion.
Symposium.
You guys going there?
Can't wait. Yeah, it should be
I'll
great.
probably be there.
Yeah, go on there with open ears. Just want to hear what everyone else is up to. Again, don't want to go there and lecture people, because there's a lot of people we really respect going who have made this possible.
Yeah.
None less or none more, I should say, than Lucy herself. So yeah, that'd
Brilliant.
be great. And Strain Series, we're doing some quick, kind of tongue-in-cheek reviews of some of these products with some absolutely
awesome.
stunning visuals.
The
Yeah.
visuals are pretty sick.
Nice.
Yeah,
Good
yeah.
production values.
Unbelievable, yeah. We're dealing with Al Hardy and his team down the coast there. It's award-winning stuff. So
Excellent. We'll
I
link
know.
that.
Yeah.
And I suppose the other thing, if any of your listeners want to have a chat about turning to the medical market, they go on to www.canwell.com.au, reach out to us, call us, give us a chat. We're always happy to have a chat and talk them through the process.
Tell them you came from the podcast. We'll know.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's
we'll
always
sort them
handy.
out. No, absolutely, because it is scary. The first time you go through to do it,
Yeah,
then you
it's a whole
realize
process.
it's not. It's actually just like literally any other doctor's appointment. You know,
I've,
you're not on a
um,
special list. Your
I've
boss
put a
isn't going
few
to find
friends
out.
over
You're
to
good.
you guys, and they've pretty much had overwhelmingly positive experiences. Maybe a few little hiccups, but you guys resolved it, and they were happy.
That's it.
Awesome.
That's it.
Yeah.
Things happen, but they get solved.
Yeah, can't promise perfection. Can promise a positive end result. That's
That's
all we
it.
can do. Yeah.
Thanks for being so honest about everything that you do and opening up to us on the podcast. We really appreciate your
Thanks for
time.
having us, guys.
Cheers,
Dude,
boys.
you guys are
Appreciate
doing
it.
great stuff here. Really appreciate you having us on.
Thank
Oh,
you.
Thanks so much.
Bye, Fab Gang.
See you, everybody.